Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to check out Carnival, a game for 2 to 4 players for ages 13 and up, with the average playtime being between 20 and 60 minutes. Now, the box says 13 and up. I have to disagree with that. I think that a competent 8-year-old or 10-year-old should be fine playing this game. In fact, when I reviewed it, I want to say a year or two ago, Vinny was not 13 yet, and he played just fine. In fact, I think he won. So yeah, don't pay too much attention to the 13 and up age limit. I do think that if you have a child that is really good at gaming and is experienced at gaming, 8 to 10 should be sufficient. But anyway, so what is Carnival? Well, in this game, you've got a midway. Every player has a midway, and your goal here is to construct 4 out of 5 of your rides. And to do that, you have to collect parts, banners, seats, that kind of thing. And if you play these cards onto your rides and you complete a set, then you can flip your ride over to indicate that you've completed it. Now, there are some other things besides card collecting. You'll be rolling dice to perform specific actions. You'll get these tickets that allow you to perform special abilities, that kind of thing. So without further ado, let's take a quick look at the components and see how the game is played. Alright, so here's a quick look at your components, minus the manual and the reference cards here. So what you're looking at in this very top row, these are your base cards. Every player starts off with one of each color, and these are the rides that they're trying to build. You've got like a Ferris wheel here, a merry-go-round, looks like some type of swing, bumper cars, a roller coaster, that kind of thing. And in order to complete these rides, they're going to be using cards from this deck. As you can see, they are color-coded to match. There are 4 parts per ride. You've got banners, lights, seats, and materials. And that holds true for every single ride. So you've got orange cards, you've got banners, lights, seats, and materials. The purple cards, lights, seats, materials, banners, that kind of thing, seats, materials, banners. So you get the idea. There's 4 parts to a ride, and these rides are broken up amongst 5 different colors. You've also got this tableau down here. This is basically where you'll be assigning dice as you roll them. I'll get into that in a minute. You've got these tickets over here. Again, they allow players to perform special abilities. And also within this deck of cards here, not only does it contain parts, but it also contains wild cards that you can basically use for any ride that you want to. Alright, so as far as game setup is concerned, and I only have it set up for 1 player, even though normally there'd be 2, 3, or 4 players playing. But for example purposes, I'm only showing the 1 player right now. So as far as game setup is concerned, each player will receive 1 wild card from the deck. After that, the deck is shuffled, wild cards and all, and then each player receives 5 more cards to form their starting hand of 6 cards, so something like this. After that, a certain number of cards will be drawn to form the discard pile equal to the number of players. I just used 2 here as an example, so this sort of mirrors a 2-player game. This tableau and the dice are placed within easy reach of all players. Each player has their own midway here, and again there are 5 base cards, 1 of each color, and each player also receives 3 tickets. Okay, so one thing to note as a quick aside, I'm just going to touch on this briefly. In a 2 or 3 player game, what you're going to want to do is take out all of the white wing-tipped cards. Now, again, I am mirroring a 2-player game, so technically I should not have this card in my hand. All of the white-tipped cards should be removed from play for a 2 to 3 player game. But this is just example purposes. I'm not going to worry about it too much. But it's just something to look out for should you decide to pick up this game and only have 2 or 3 people in your household. Alright, so the game is played over a series of player turns, and on a player's turn, they'll have to observe 4 parts. The first part of which says, if no cards are in the discard pile, take the top card from the deck and place it in the discard pile. So had there been no cards here in the discard pile, you'll start a discard pile by taking 1 from top of the deck. Pretty simple stuff. The second part of a player's turn is to simply discard down to 6 cards. So if you have more than 6 cards in your hand, you'll have to discard down and put some into the discard pile. Alright, so the third part is a little more complicated. You can do one of two things. You can either discard any number of cards from your hand or your midway, put them into the discard pile, and then draw that many from the deck. In essence, you're trying to refresh your hand and get rid of dead cards. You can either do that, or you can roll these 3 dice here, choose 2, and perform specific actions as shown on the tableau. Okay, so what are the different actions that are on the tableau? Well, I am not going to go over every single one in detail, so I'll let the reference card do the talking for me. Now, this isn't going to say very much, it's just 2 words here for each action, but deck draw, I think you get the idea there. You can draw 1 card from the deck. If you assign a 2, then you get to take 1 from the discard pile, which is why it's necessary at the beginning of your turn to make sure that there's a discard pile present. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do this action. Number 3 here, if you have a 3 die and you want to assign that as your action, you can take a card from your opponent's hand. Number 4 here is a hand trade, so basically you can take 1 card from your player's hand, but then you have to give 1 back. So it's a way of getting rid of dead cards that you don't want. Midway trade, somewhat similar. You can take a card that is on your midway, give it to your opponent, then you can take 1 back. And then finally, number 6 here, midway steal. That just simply involves taking a card from your opponent's midway. Now, obviously, I didn't cover everything there. For example, there is something called a bullseye. If you roll the 3 dice and they are all the same value, then you can use all 3 dice, which is pretty cool. And there's some other rules about whenever you give cards or take cards from your opponent. Basically, you cannot give cards or take cards that would result in duplicate cards showing up in anyone's midway. So you can't have 2 seats under 1 ride, or 2 banners, that kind of thing. Alright, so part 4 of a player's turn is pretty simple. Basically, you're going to take a look at your hand and either start a ride or continue an existing ride. To start a ride, you have to have 2 parts for that ride. So if we just take a look at the hand real quick, we see here that we've got 2 orange cards. They're different. Again, you can have duplicates. So banners and lights. So I could put that down on top of orange here, or it's kind of hard for me to tell. It's either orange or red, or a combination thereof. Or I could actually place this wild card on top of that, maybe to act as seats, which is sitting in the discard pile. Or I could start purple by putting seats and this wild card down. And if you already have one existing, then all you have to do is just simply add to it. But for your very first turn of the game, you're not going to have any going, so you have to have at least 2 cards of a particular color in order for that to work. After that, after you're done playing cards, what you'll want to do to end your turn, you'll just simply draw 3 cards from the deck. Now, part 4 of a player's turn is fairly involved. There are some special rules to remember, but I'm just going to cover the highlights here just for the sake of expediency. Basically, part 4 of a player's turn involves a player taking a look at their hand and either starting a new ride or building upon an existing one. Players can also reassign wild cards that may be in their midway to other established incomplete rides. So just as an example, let's just go ahead and take a look here. And it looks like we can actually start something because we have 2 orange cards. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place the banners and the lights cards right on top of this orange base card just to start it off. Again, you need at least 2 or more part cards in order to start a ride. You can also add to it further if you want to. Like I could put a wild card on top of that. But one thing to consider when it comes to wild cards, yes, they are very convenient, but if you manage to complete an entire set, have all 4 cards, and create a natural set, that means not using a wild card at all, then you get to flip this over and take an additional ticket, assuming that you don't have 3 already. 3 is sort of like the limit in this game, but if I had, say, 1 ticket left, and I managed to find all of the cards I needed, banners, light, I don't know if I'll find it, materials, here we go. So if I create a natural set like this, and I only had 1 ticket left, I could go ahead and flip this over and receive another ticket. So while wild cards are convenient, you know, it's something to remember, because these tickets are pretty powerful. Now, once a player is done playing cards, that'll basically end their turn. However, if they have less than 3 cards in their hand, they'll want to draw cards from the deck to bring their hand size back up to 3. Alright, so you're probably wondering, well, what are these tickets over here? Why are they so important? Well, they allow players to perform special actions, one of which allows a player to add or subtract 1 pip from a die roll before the actions are taken. So if you roll these 3 dice and you're like, man, I really wish I had a 2, you could change this 1 to a 2, like so, by giving up 1 ticket. You could also spend a ticket to just re-roll all 3 dice altogether. Finally, you can block 1 action. Let's say your opponent is forcing a trade on you via one of these actions over here on their turn. You can spend 1 ticket to block that action. And that's basically all there is to it. Players will continue taking turns until one player manages to complete 4 out of their 5 rides, and they win the game if they manage to do that. Now, it's important to stress that I did not cover all of the rules found in the manual. This was just a quick overview to give you an idea as to how the game is played. For example, there is mention of team play in the rulebook, so if you want to play in teams, that's possible. There's also a quick play variant to where players only have to get 3 out of 5 rides done in order to win the game. I prefer that, honestly, but that's just me, just because I'm a busy guy. So what did I think of Carnival? Well, again, the quick play variant, really cool. I like that. One thing I didn't like about this is that these cards, again, these part cards have text, like seats, or lights, or materials, but they're very difficult to see from across the table. What would have been cool is if each of these cards, or card types, like all the lights, or all of these seats, had a unique graphic on them, so that if you're looking across the table, you can clearly see, based on the graphics or icon or whatever, you can see what your opponent has without having to go like this and try and read it, or just simply asking them what they have. But other than that, the game is very colorful. The colors themselves are like really sharp. This tableau is nice and thick. That's pretty cool. The dice are wooden, well made. Everything about the quality is top-notch. So, do I recommend Carnival? Yes. Again, I've written a review already and published it like a year or 2 ago. But just in case you haven't read it yet, go to www.dadsgamingaddiction.com or click on the link in the below description. If you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you can keep up to date with any new content I happen to publish. This is Vince. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.